There is the General Secretary of the NPP making an appearance before the Commission. Mr. John Boadu will cross over and listen in.
The Bible.
I, John Boadu, do hereby swear by the Bible
That the evidence that I shall give before the Commission of Inquiry
that the evidence that I shall give before the Commission of Inquiry
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Please be reminded that by the oath you have taken, you have made a promise to speak the truth, and the failure to do so constitutes an offense for which you will be liable to punishment.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Counsel may announce himself for the purposes of the record.
Respectfully, my lords, Gary Nimakon Mafu. Gary, Gary Nimakon Mafu. My lords, I represent the witness.
Chief, you are welcome.
Thank you.
Will you, for the purposes of the record, repeat your full name for the commission?
My name is John Boadu.
And you do confirm that you are the General Secretary for the New Patriotic Party. Is that the case?
Yes, my lord. Yes, my lord.
Mr. Boadu, are you able to tell the commission some of the duties you carry out as the General Secretary of the New Patriotic Party?
My lord, as General Secretary of the New Patriotic Party, I'm responsible for the general administration and operations of the party. By that, the National Steering Committee is responsible for the daily management of the party. That is, if you put it in a corporate setup, it's like the board of directors of the company, and the General Secretary is the Chief Executive Officer who implements decisions of the Steering Committee, the National Executive, and National Council of the party. And is also responsible for the entire operations of the party, including our external branches.
Very well. Mr. Boadu, on the 31st of January 2019, were you present anywhere in the Ayawaso West Wegon constituency?
Yes, my lord.
Where specifically did you find yourself in the constituency, and at what time?
I was in all the 137 polling stations on that day.
When did you start and when did you end?
Our operational center was in the constituency, Elkin Hotel, and I slept there. So I virtually started by 4 a.m., 5 a.m., ensuring that all our agents and support groups are in place before the start of the polls. So I virtually started by 5 a.m.
Now, there's been reports of heavy security presence at the polling stations on the day in question. Did that come to your attention at any point?
What I saw was that in addition to the police and occasionally some military people, depending on the polling station, we have immigration and the presence of prison service. I also saw additional support by some people with the inscription of National Security Council at the police station. But it was not that heavy. We've been involved in those operations for all this while, and I think that it is well represented.
Now, with your experience with elections and by-elections, would you say that it was normal to see national security operatives at polling stations?
It is normal. Most of these elections, you have overt and covert operations of the National Security Council or National Security around. Sometimes you don't see them because they are not uniformed. Okay. Okay.
Now,
thank you, my Lord.
in the course of your movement through the constituency, did you witness any incidents at all, being violent or otherwise?
No, my Lord.
Has it subsequently come to your attention that a number of violent incidents occurred within the constituency?
It is only in Labawaleshi polling station, which is made up of 4 polling stations at that particular spot, that I heard on radio initially around 9:30 a.m. thereabouts that the NDC had said that they've withdrawn. So I quickly have to rush there to check what exactly may have happened.
And would you be able to share with the commission what your observation or observations were when you got to Labawaleshi?
By the time I got there, calm had returned. Voters were voting normally, filing in to vote in the 4 polling stations. But the presence of the security agencies were heavy in that polling station.
Are you able to tell the commission exactly when you arrived at Labawaleshi?
To be between 9:30 and 10 a.m. in between. Because I had in the morning gone to a few polling stations, have to come to our operational center by 9 because there was something that I need to deal with. Then it was at that point that I heard on radio that something has happened in that particular polling station. So I rushed there to see what exactly has happened.
Did you have polling agent or agents at the Labawaleshi polling station?
Yes, by our arrangement, we had 2 per polling station. So at that particular zone, if I should put it, we have 8 agents there, 2 representing each polling station.
Have you subsequently received reports of the happening at that polling station from your agents?
Not a report per se, but because I also went there, asked them about what has happened, and by what I was told, what happened outside the polling station. And we've told them that as a polling agent, your concentration should be on the polls. Because we've seen such things before where people cause distractions, and if you are not very careful as an agent, you lose track of what really is happening.
Now, there's been a number of videos around town, online, about violent incidents, shooting, a situation in which an MP was slapped. Have you seen any of that?
I've also seen some.
Now, some of the reports in town is that those incidents were caused by a group called the Invincible Force, which is related to the new Patriotic Party, masquerading on the day as national security. Have you also come across that?
I'm not in a position to know.
I mean, have you heard those reports?
Not exactly as you are putting it.
We have had Honorable Sam George, the MP in question, tell this commission that he has reason to believe that the men who were dressed in black and brown uniform and masked, who are said to be the perpetrators, were the invincible forces masquerading as national security. What have you got to say about that?
I'm not in a position to know that members of invisible forces masqueraded as national security operatives to perpetrate any violence. I'm not in a position to know that.
Do you know this or not? Because the commission has been informed that some members of invincible forces and other vigilante groupings have been enrolled into the national security. Do you know about that?
Not that as a party. We, national security, I think, have their own processes of recruitment and have their own qualification criteria and all that. So I don't know whether it is specifically to recruit members of a vigilante group. I'm not aware, because it is not a strategy of the party to do so.
Mr. Boadu, do you know a gentleman called Double?
Gentleman called Double. Yes, I know.
How do you know him?
This is, I don't know whether exactly, because if you mention, I don't know whether it's the full name is Double. If it's a guy named, so to speak, you may have a lot of people called Double. And
very well. I mentioned
I'm
Double.
To be clear about that, yeah.
Because that is the name the commission has been given. According to Honorable Sam George, on the day in question, he saw a gentleman by the name of Double, who happened to be in a military uniform and operating alongside the national security operatives. So this is the man I'm asking you about. Do you know anybody by that name at all?
I will be grateful if I see the picture of the individual in question, so that I will know whether it's the person we are talking about. Because
very well. Now, according to Honorable Sam George, this person by the name of Double is a former Invincible Forces member who is currently with the national security. Would you have any knowledge of that?
Without seeing who he is, it will be difficult for me to be able to conclude on that.
Now, Boadu.
Yes, my lord.
Tripone, Talensi, Atiwa, and now Ayawaso West Wogon. All these are places where we've had electoral violence. Am I right?
Yes, you've omitted Akwetia.
Very well, thank you. And all these were associated with by-elections. Is that the case?
Yes, my lord.
So then you will agree with me that for some time now, our by-elections, our elections in general, and by-elections in particular, are characterized by violence. Would you agree?
To a large extent, yes, my lord.
Now, Mr. Boadu, are you able, as a political actor, to tell the commission why these political violence happen?
In my honest view, it is needless for it to happen in the first place, because most of these happenings sometimes are not directly related to the polling process. So, for instance, you take a place like Chereponi. in most of these by-elections, we agree with the police, particularly getting closer to the day of elections, to have rallies on separate days. It's a convention by political parties that a day before the actual elections, political parties don't campaign. So most often we pick the last 2 days before the elections. Political parties agree with the police mediating to have separate days for their rallies. In Cherepone in question, we had written to the police suggesting to them that we are having, it was the death of our Member of Parliament, Honorable Doris Sedu. We're having the funeral on Sunday, and we wish that the police grant us the opportunity to have a funeral on Sunday and in the evening have our rally. We got correspondence from the police agreeing on that date. The NDC a day before had also been given the opportunity to have their rally on Saturday. By the tail end of their rally, they announced that they were going. Coincidentally, the vice president then, who is now the former president of our country, Honorable His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, was the one who addressed their rally on Saturday. By the tail end of their rally, they again announced that they are going to have their rally on Sunday in front of the residence of our candidates. We complained to the police. We went as far as going to the commander at Yendi Divisional Police. Having received confirmation letter from them, we expected them to have told the NDC in plain words that you don't have the right to do so. What we heard from the police was that they've been instructed to provide security for both political parties to have their rallies on the same day. In the morning of the election, of the rally, as we were putting together, erecting our canopies and speakers for the rally, the NDC organized route march in the morning and decided to walk through where we are having our program, and that resulted in what we saw. So it was needless if the police or the security agency had been firm in ensuring that what has been agreed on is respected. I think that wouldn't have gotten where we got to. Another example is the Akwitia by-election, for instance. It was just 6 polling stations. That it wasn't even a by-election, it was a runoff of just 6 polling stations because there had been violence in those polling stations that could not allow the election to complete on the set date. There was total breakdown of security. People were maimed to the extent that on the day of elections, one of our polling agents, who is a member of parliament, Honorable Damboche, was asked by the NDC, supporters that are massed up at the polling station, holding machetes, all sorts of offensive weapons, insisting that they are not going to accept Damboche to be our polling agent. And my lord, the security agents were present. They made sure Damboche is moved from the place as our agent. And the subsequent atrocities that was meted was done in the presence of the security agent. So I think that firm insistence of agreed positions by our mediator, that's the national security apparatus, is one of the reasons for some of these things occurring.
Now, You've mentioned the police twice in two different incidents. We've had high hierarchies of the police come through, and we have been informed that politicians do not allow the police to perform their duties. What do you have to say about that?
We in the New Patriotic Party don't have even the authority to decide not to allow the police to perform their duties. I don't know if other political parties have that right and authority not to allow the police to perform their duties.
Now, once again, as a political actor and with your experience, what do you think we can do as a nation to prevent some of these electoral violence and clashes?
First of all, I think that there's a need for the security agencies to assert their authority. There's a need for them to be fair and firm. There's a need for them to set examples of some of these things that come up. Clearly, people are seeing. Clearly, people do things that runs counter to established norms. And examples must be made from them in order to deter others who are incubating the idea of also getting themselves involved in such acts. I think that if this fairness is seen by all, and also this process, for instance, is more or less the first time in our history as a country, particularly the Fourth Republican Constitution, where things have gone wrong, so to speak. And the government has taken the bold step in trying to also make sure that we get the full facts and appropriate recommendations are made to government to also act. I think that this is the way forward for us as a country.
Boadu.
Yes, my lord.
Mr. Muntala Mohammed of PPP appeared before the commission, and according to him, one of the causes of these electoral violence, especially when it comes to by-election, is the convergence of too many people at a constituency. What do you have to say?
I think that it will be difficult as a fledgling democracy to decide to restrict the number of people at such events that are of national character.
Before you go on, by too many people, I mean the top echelons of political parties. You have the chairman, the general secretary, trickling down, all of them converging within a particular constituency.
My lord, it will be irresponsible on the part of political leadership if such an important process or event is happening, if not by reason of circumstances beyond your control. We must be seen to be there. We must be seen to provide the support and the direction to the party. You must also remember, my lord, that we hardly have experiences. We hardly have mock exercise of an election by political parties. We also use this occasion, maybe not a good event to use, but we use it to also get other members of our party, particularly our regional leadership, to also take them through the process of election campaigning, door-to-door organization of rallies, and speaking those and how to address them. So it serves a lot of purposes, and it is for that reason why you see a lot of people converging. And you also will remember, you will note that we have members of parliament that also have to also go through the process. It is for that reason why you have a lot more high profile, so to speak, members of political actors in such occasions.
Is it also the case that by-elections, for instance, are used as testing grounds for political parties?
To the extent that it affords us the opportunity to get first-hand practical experience in campaigning, mobilization, collation of results, and its announcement, yes. To that extent, yes.
What about it giving you an idea as to the outcome of the ensuing general election?
It's also a barometer, yeah.
Boadu.
Yes, my lord.
The Invincible Forces, Delta Force, Kandahar Boys, Borga Bulldogs. Are these names familiar?
Yes, they are.
These groupings are said to be, for want of a better description, vigilante groups associated with the new patriotic party. Do you admit that?
The nomenclature that we've been using today, listening to Dr. Kwesine Enin, he has even been able to graduate it from full soldierism to vigilante and even talking about militia. For me, and practicing over the years, these are members of the party that provide support for party activities over time. Depending on the situation, they adopt names. You may even see, I will not be surprised to note that you may even see one individual being a member of the names that you've mentioned, if they are all located in a particular constituency or a particular region.
Now, the explanation you have just given is captured in a News Online report, and that is Peace Online, in which you are said to have explained the usefulness of these groupings. Is that the case?
Yes. I think I need to further let you know that as a party, we have organs of the party. And these organs are the youth wing, the women's wing, the Nasara wing, Young Executive Forum. All these names that you've seen, just as you have lawyer ladies, you have, even just last Sunday, I had a new one, Ambassador for Nana Association or something, AFWA. You understand? These are individual groups that have sympathies for the new patriots. So if you take Invincible Forces, for instance, as their name, they are individual groups, not an organ of the party, that majority of them have sympathies for the new patriotic party. And I must also take you through that if you look at the political architecture of our political party, security or supporting our party activities at the polling station, at the constituency level, most often in times of coalition, at the regional level and the national level, is part of the entire political administration of the party. Sometimes it comes with names. I remember in the year 2000, as part of our strategies, we had support group representing us in all the polling stations throughout the country, and we've been doing so all the time. It's when it gets there, we don't go pick Invisible Force or Delta Force or whatever. We pick members of our party who comes from the polling station, comes from the constituency to provide support for our party at a particular point in time. So they have a lot of usefulness if you want to put them in that bracket here.
Mr. Boadu, for the purposes of clarification, do you admit that these groupings I've mentioned, the Invincible, Bulldogs, and what have you, are owned by the New Patriotic Party?
They are not owned by the New Patriotic Party, my lord.
Are they sponsored by the New Patriotic Party?
They are not sponsored by the New Patriotic Party, my lord.
But you agree with me that the New Patriotic Party is a beneficiary of the activities of this group. Is that the case?
I, in person, I am a beneficiary of this groupings as individual members of the party. I remember in 2016, there was a re-registration exercise. And a day before, I've heard a lot of challenges happening in the Sutufi, Sunafo area. I decided as General Secretary, then I was then the acting General Secretary, to visit the area. Some of our members had been beaten to pulp. Some of them has been hospitalized. On my way, I normally will not go with a lot of people. I normally drive alone. For whatever reason, I decided when I got to Kumasi to ask some of our young men to join me to visit those areas. And my lord, at one polling station, there was this gentleman calling himself now, but I didn't know him. When he got to the polling station, we were there. He arrived with his men, holding guns, matches, knives. Introduced himself to me as the brother of Collins, Honorable Collins Dauda, and that we are in Accra, making noise about their activities here. And today, he's here with me, and he's going to deal with me. Had it not been the presence of these gentlemen that accompanied me, it would have been a different story. Because the police was virtually helpless. They were surging towards us. Everybody was running for cover. We're lucky that the polling station was closer to a police station. So Naba was charging at me. I have to dash to the police station. The police commander did extremely well. Went to the police station, brought out AK-47, gave about 2-3 warning shots. Naba and his group also replied. And constituency chairman at that time was beaten. As we speak now, my lord, he cannot put his head down. Beaten. So I personally, if I had not had the services of these young men with me on that day, because we were all running with the police to take cover, it would have been catastrophic. I wouldn't know what would have happened. Yeah.
Very well. Now, yes, you paint a very beautiful picture as to the usefulness of these groupings. But then we've also had incidents of violence perpetuated by people associated or presenting themselves as members of these groupings. Are you aware?
Regrettably so, my lord.
Will you agree with me if I should suggest to you that that happens because the political parties associated with these groupings lack control?
My lord, as I told you, we don't own these individuals. Whatever name.
How do you come by them?
We don't come by them.
Now, the gentleman, for instance, who accompanied you to
These
Kenya,
are party members of the party in Ashanti region who occasionally, depend on events that we are having, provide support for the party. These are party members. And as I told you, you may well know that an individual may be member of this, member of that at the same time. So I think that we need to understand how these things work so that in offering or preferring solutions, we'll be able to touch on where exactly it is and provide proper recommendation for the way forward for our parties and our country.
Boadu,
Yes,
we
my
have
lord.
our police force and we have other internal security agencies. Why do we need men outside these forces to provide security?
We as political parties, it will be very difficult for police to provide, particularly if you have groups of people who outnumber the police at a particular polling station. We've had occasions where ballot boxes are snatched. We've had occasions where even voters queuing to vote are prevented from doing so. And sometimes the police seem helpless. I'll give you a typical example. In 2006, 2007, thereabouts, there was re-registration exercise, and I was in Tamale. I got to the polling station. The police was sitting very far from where the registration exercise was going on. And you can see clearly people that are not of age, by their size, you can see. So I asked the policeman, these people registering obviously are not up to the voting age. They said, so when we also copy more. You can understand.
If you can translate that.
To wait means if I have seen that they are not of voting age, I should go and sack them from the queue. And you can imagine what it will look like in a polling station in Tamale. I was then the National Youth Organizer, if I should call it the National Youth Organizer. The National Youth Organizer of a New Patriotic Party sacking people or removing people from the queue. You could imagine what this will have led to.
Mr. Boadu.
Yes, my lord.
The commission has been given two different explanations as to ownership of these, for want of a better description, vigilante groupings. One is that these groupings are owned by the leading political parties. Then there is a second opinion that says that they are actually owned and sponsored by individuals within the political parties, even though the political party is the ultimate beneficiary. Do you share any of these two thoughts?
You can have a combination of a lot of positions as to how these groups are financed and their operations. For us in the New Patriotic Party, we don't sponsor these groupings. But these groupings may have relationship with individuals in the party. So, for instance, as I sit here, if there's an event that a member of our party, who may happen to be a member of whatever grouping exists, loses, let's say, the parents, and comes to me for support, I'll support him because he's a member of the party. But by extension, he may be a member of other groupings, So that is one. The second aspect is the motivation that informs the forming of some of these groupings. I can say without mincing words. That if you look at a grouping like Invisible Forces, for instance, it was formed around the time that these individuals felt that the state was not in the position to defend and protect members of the party. Because, for instance, what happened in Agboboloshi, clear example of attack on members of our party that was not resolved at all. You hear of police investigation into this, police investigation into that, nothing happens. It was formed around the time that we went to Akwitia, where just 6 polling stations. It was difficult for us. You see people who were clearly not voters in a particular polling station coming to vote in the name of people. That people in that polling station recognizes that, Shaibu, voter register, Ukraine, Akwesimeno, but Shaibu votes. The police was helpless, Electoral Commission was helpless, and all that. So sometimes it depends on the exigencies of the time that motivate some of these groupings. So your 2 reasons can be true, but there are other reasons, as I've told you, motivate the thriving of some of these groupings.
Mr. Boadu,
Yes, my lord.
correct me if I'm wrong, but you've informed the commission that the New Patriotic Party doesn't own any of these vigilante groupings. Am I right?
You are right, my lord.
Very well. But then, there's been a call by the president that the 2 major political parties should sit down and fashion out a way of disbanding these vigilante groupings.
The reason is that if you look at our 4th Republic, between the New Patriotic Party and the National Democratic Party, if you take the presidential vote, we've been sharing close to 95, 96% all the time throughout the period. If you look at the events that we complain about, it's more or less between New Patriotic Party, although we don't own these these groups, where they have sympathies for the New Patriotic Party and have sympathies for the National Democratic Party. In that National Democratic Congress, in that sense, and as you also noted, that most of these groupings or individuals, you can trace their funding to individuals in political parties. And the motivation that leads to forming of some of these groupings as a result of the seemingly siege of the political party. So it's time to reason that if a conversation between these 2 major dominant parties begins and the trust is established in an open manner, it will go a long way in reducing some of these needless attacks on ourselves.
Now, will you agree with me, for instance, that if from the reasons you've given for the existence of some of these groupings, if the police, for instance, is to be empowered to be able to protect ballot boxes and prevent all these other reasons for which these groupings exist, there wouldn't be the need for these groupings?
Yes, my lord, you are right. In addition to that, we should have a government that is also willing to go the full hog in support, political will, in supporting our security agencies to implement their mandate.
Now, It's been almost a week since the president's call. Since you are from the New Patriotic Party, what efforts have been made from your side towards the president's call?
Yeah, since the president made that call, our national chairman, Honorable Freddie Blay, had gotten in touch with the national chairman of the NDC of a possible meeting between the two parties. As part of the discussion, our national chairman was made aware that the NDC had just finished their flag bearership race, and they've lined up series of activities. So within that week, coupled with the fact that the national chairman himself is, there's this tape that is making the rounds, and I think that he's dealing with that as well. So we've not been able to schedule a meeting, but there's an ongoing discussions. We've also seen that the NDC had also taken the lead in acknowledging the president's position that he has taken and written to the president and copied the national chairman. By that, copied the New Patriotic Party. So I think that is a good start for us.
Mr. Boadu.
Yes, my lord.
So by the acts from your side and on the other side, can you assure the commission that there is that will to meet, have those discussions, and I don't know if disbanding is the right word, but do the needful?
Yes, my lord.
Thank you, Mr. Boadu. Mr. Chairman, your witness.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Boadu.
Yes, my lord.
You are the General Secretary or the Acting General Secretary?
I am the General Secretary of the party. I acted as General Secretary from December 2015 to June 2018. And I was elected at our conference that was held in Kufuor as the substantive General Secretary of the party.
All right. I ask because there is this report in the, I think, by Star FM, where you are reported as the Acting General Secretary of the NPP, and it says that you said that vigilante groups such as the Invisible and Delta Forces are part of the NPP and will continue to exist. That statement is attributed to you. Correct?
Part of the... it depends on how they put it, but just as I've said before you, that these are members of our party that have sympathy for the New Patriotic Party. To that extent, my lord, yes.
It is also stated in this report that speaking to Bolare on Star Chat on Wednesday, the date is not mentioned, you said the vigilante groups are essential to the party. And let me read to you a quote that is attributed to you. In quote, "In times of peace, people think that they must not prepare for war. It is rather in times of peace that you should always prepare. I'm giving you the background of what we found ourselves to the extent that our headquarters was vandalized, all our resources, our materials were destroyed. We must protect ourselves. We must make sure that at least our properties and persons are protected. It is for that reason that we have young men who help in protecting us, and I'll support them any day. That's not to say that they must take the law into their own hands. No, they must work within the law. They exist, they'll continue to exist."
My lord.
That's correct.
Yes, my lord.
That was a statement that you made.
Yes, my lord.
Do you stand by this statement that they will continue to exist
Yes, my Lord.
in spite of the statement made by the President?
My
State
Lord,
of the
this is a state. That's why it will be helpful to me if I know the exact date, because you are referring to a particular event that occurred to the extent that our headquarters by morning 5 a.m. had been vandalized by a group of people that some of them were arrested, is still in court anyway, my Lord. On that score, having members of our party providing protection for us is something that we are going to continue to have as a party. That is different from disbanding groups that have operations that frowns on the law. And my Lord, you did indicated in the said reports that went further to state that whatever groupings, whatever groupings must work within the ambit of the Lord, my Lord.
You don't remember when you made this statement?
I don't, if I know the date, because if you refer to it as when I was acting General Secretary, then it will be between December 2015 to June or July 2018, my Lord.
I believe it's February 8th. Okay, so it's in 2018, February 8th, 2018.
I associate myself with that statement, and I will not be surprised. I will make that statement any day, that members of our party who provide support, we have different supports in our political architecture. Some do campaigning, some do door-to-door, some are ushers, some provide support for our party, and we will continue to have them. But they must work within the law. And we have a president that will not also condone any act that is outside our constitution. And we will forcibly support any action to make sure that if somebody, even if it's a member of the party, acts outside, he's dealt with by the laws of our country.
So, in effect, you are saying that these groups will continue to exist, but you're going to make sure that they act within the confines of the law.
My Lord, it depends on the group you are talking about. I'm saying that.
I'm referring to these groups, the invisible forces, Delta forces, which are associated, or to use your expression, have sympathies for the party. You are saying that these groups will continue to exist, but you think that they should work within the law, within the framework of the law.
No, my Lord, with all due respect, by where we are now, with the call from the president, with the acknowledgement of the call from the president from our main opponent, that we should sit down to look at the activities of these groupings. Depending on the outcome, we are law-abiding political parties, and it doesn't serve anybody, particularly when some of these groupings go outside or act in a manner that frowns on our laws. So I think that's where we are. Any discussion and the outcome of any discussion, in addition to the recommendation that this August committee is expected to come, we are ready to work with it, my Lord.
You also stated that the police in many situations are helpless. They are unable to act when you expect them to act. And that is why you need these groups to act in situations where the police are helpless. Is that correct?
Yes, my Lord.
And therefore, unless the police or the security agencies are strengthened, then you will still have cause to, you will still need these groups.
My Lord, if the security agencies are strengthened, that alone is not enough. Having the mutual trust between ourselves and our main opponent, as I said, we constitute almost close to 95%. If all of us agree that there's no point in, even if they have sympathies, we don't owe them. We should be able to rein them in and ensure that we have a police service that we can all respect and trust, my Lord.
Said governments must show the political will to strengthen the police or the security forces. Can you, am I saying exactly what you said?
I added that as an addition to a question that I was asked, that if political parties or the security agencies are strengthened, would that be enough? I say, yes, it is good, but we must have government that are ready to also help them to be independent and also resource them. If that commitment, political will does not come, it makes it difficult for us to have what we have. So the setting up of this commission, with all the violence and atrocities that we've seen over the years, we've never had the opportunity like this. With all the violence we've seen, we've never had a government that have decided that even if you have sympathies towards me, if you act outside the bounds of the law must deal with you. That's exactly what I mean, my Lord.
So are you suggesting that your government, which is in power at the moment, has not demonstrated the political will to strengthen the police?
On the contrary, my Lord, my government is demonstrating the political will to find lasting solution to this menace. My Lord, thank you.
But still, as at now, you don't have confidence in the police to, for example, protect you or to protect the ballot box during elections.
My Lord,
as of now,
I think that with where we are, and the president opened the conversation for the major political parties, I know that particularly reading the tone of the letter from the NDC chairman, acknowledging and accepting the opportunity for this platform for such an important discussion, we will get there, my Lord.
Why do you think the police sometimes seem helpless to act when they're expected to act? For example, you said that at a particular polling station, you drew attention of the police to the fact that minors were voting, and the police officer told you that you must go and stop them from voting.
My Lord, in my thinking,
why do you think that the police are unable to act in situations like that? Why do you think that they seem helpless?
My Lord, in my thinking and observation, it seems to me that if the government have the political will to support police people or security agencies to act in situations like that and support them irrespective of who engages in the atrocities, the police will be strengthened. Because with my discussion with the police commander in Esutufi when that event, as I described to this honorable commission, happened, in my discussion with him, the impression is that if you are not very careful, you'll be transferred to an area that will be detrimental to your own career in terms of your children's schools and all the social tidings and establishment that you've gotten stay in a particular. So transfers and demotions and other things are things that put fear in the police to act. But I can say that even on that day, with all these points that I've made, the police commander at that place acted. Strangely enough, in the morning when he was called by radio, he said, "Oh, I will not speak."
In effect, what you are saying is that the police service has been politicized, and so they are unable to act because they fear that sanctions might be imposed when they take certain actions.
I may not say maybe patronage.
Patronage.
Yes, my lord.
What do you mean by patronage?
Patronage by supporting the government of the day for not doing things that seem to have reigned in on political actors that have sympathies to members of political parties of government of the day.
Are you suggesting that the appointment process of, for example, the IGP should be reviewed?
My lord, you want my opinion on that?
Yes.
Maybe a broader way of looking at the appointment will be helpful. Particularly, notice a professional institution, and I think that they must have their own way of succession, and if even government will come in, it should be broader than what we see.
What about the appointment of the Electoral Commissioner? Do you think that appointment process also needs to be reviewed or reformed?
My lord, looking at our constant division or mistrust amongst political actors, I think that so far, yeah, you may have all sorts of reasons, but we've been able to have successful elections from 1992 to 2016, and even the just ended elections. I think that so far so good. We may have our challenges, yes.
Council asked you whether you know this gentleman called Double. Do you know anybody by that name?
My lord, if I see the picture of the
I think we have a video.
or the gentleman,
Do we have the video in which he appears? Can you recognize the person
Which of them?
standing next to the police officer? Counsel, can you show him the...
With the pictures, can you get another one? With the picture. Just want to be sure. Just want to be sure. Yes, yeah.
You recognize the individual shown in that video?
Yes, my lord.
And he's called Double?
Yes.
And was he a member of the Invisible Forces?
I know him to be a member of the New Patriotic Party.
Okay.
I haven't seen him in... I don't know for a fact that he's a member of the Invisible. I know him to be a member of the party.
You can't confirm whether he was ever a member of the Invisible Forces or he was a member of those groups that are there to protect you.
No, he's not even a member of internal security, even at the headquarters. He comes around in those days. Now, I normally see him at the airports. I think that he's working there. That's what I know. I know him as a member of the party. I know him Double. He's not a member of internal security at the headquarters.
But do you know that he's now a member of the national security? He's a national security operative.
I don't know, but I normally see him at the airport, particularly when the new airport had not been commissioned. He was. I always see him at the VIP section. Yeah, my lord.
Now, would you agree with the statement that members of the Invisible Forces or members of the groups sympathetic to your party have been incorporated into the national security?
My lord, I don't know. All the members that we've been working with at the headquarters providing security for us are still there. They are still there. Ali, Robert, they are still there. And for him, I didn't even know him as a member of Invisible Force in the first place. He's a member of our party, and of late, I normally see him when the old airport had the VVIP session. I normally see him there. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boadu, for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
A few questions. Mr. Boadu, you describe the people we are talking about as not being a standing group, but they are members of the party, and as and when you call upon them, they get together and do whatever they are required to do, right?
Yes, my lord.
But do you know before standing armies became the norm, that was how armies operated?
I have not studied the security evolution, and I'm not in a position to know, my lord.
I can appreciate that, but standing armies were not always the norm. In our traditional society, we didn't have standing armies, but we fought wars.
Yes, my lord.
So the fact that they can be mobilized at short notice to perform these tasks should tell you that they are a group, however you wish to characterize them.
My lord, just as I said, for instance, at the headquarters, we have skeletal security arrangements by our members who protect our officers. Depending on an event, just as I told this honorable commission, that on the said day that I was going to observe the registration exercise, when I got to Ashanti region, I informed the party to provide me with young men that can provide support for me, that can accompany me to observe the exercise. And they provided me with some few people to join me, my lord.
What work do these young men do when there are no registration processes to observe?
Some of them are business people, some of them do their own individual work. I know one particular gentleman, when before 2016, he was a business, he deals in cattle, sheep, and goats, goes to Burkina Faso and other places to bring them for sale at Agogloshi. He used to bring me some in those days. Now, I don't see him. But in events, say we have by-election or have any other activities that need the support of these, he comes around. Immediately after that, he goes to ply his trade. That is an example that I know.
How did you feel when you heard that members of some group had chased out somebody sent to Kumasi as national security something? You remember the incident?
Yes.
How did you feel?
I felt it was a regrettable event.
How did you feel when you heard that Honorable Akoto had been chased out of a meeting he himself had called?
It's also something that was not right, and I know in that example in particular, the security agencies are on the heels of the individual that did that. Some of them were arrested, and I think the process is ongoing.
How did you feel when you heard that some people were chasing out of office a hospital administrator or a hospital administration official from office?
My lord, any act that is not within the law and it's not allowable. In most of these cases, I even issue statements condemning some of these acts.
Are you beginning to worry that these groups are getting insolent? Let me put it that way.
To a large extent, with the will that the state or through the president is injecting and ensuring that individuals, either from that group or from any other group that commits acts that is outside the bounds of our law, are to be dealt with. I think that is the way forward, and with all that is going on, with the setting up of this commission, with the possible conversation and discussion that we're going to have with political parties to determine the platform and what, I think that we will gradually get a hold on such activities.
So do you think these groups should continue to exist?
I think that with where we are, my Lord, no.
So we agree to draw a line under everything that has happened?
Yes, my Lord.
We are going to try and address the tit-for-tat politics that is creating insecurity all around?
Yes, my Lord. It is in our interest to do so, my Lord.
And we agree that there comes a time in the life of any nation when people of courage must stand up and do the right thing.
Yes, my Lord. And this is the time, my Lord.
I thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. John. I'll ask you only 2 questions, but I'll proceed with a number of sentences which I'm sure, with your experience as a Ghanaian and as an experienced political operator, you may agree with before I come to the question. Number 1, with the police. You know the structure of the Ghana police. You know that the IGP is appointed by a president he doesn't have to give any reasons. He can be dismissed by the president. He doesn't have to give any reasons. From assistant commissioner to deputy commissioner to commissioner. Again, after the police council has considered the paper in front of them, they submit a name to the office of the president, and people are appointed or left out. Again, the president doesn't have to give any reasons. And you know from your experience in this country, and you may not know, but from experience in the 50s up to now, people have been dismissed or have been bypassed in promotions without reasons being given. And you know that the president's action, any president, are backed by the law, the constitution that we operate. And that virtually there's been no change in those aspects of the constitution that govern the police from the First Republic until now. And therefore my question is, with the structure of the police, the way they operate, the atmosphere in which they operate, do you think it is possible for them to be, as you said, firm, fair, objective in such instances as happened in Yendi or Tripoli, especially as you said, as you know that sometimes people are transferred to outlandish places. Do you think it is possible for them to exhibit what one writer has said, animal boldness, in quote, for the police to exhibit animal boldness in this environment?
My Lord, before we even decide whether we want to amend that aspect, I think that if you have a government that have the political will of protecting and rewarding right officers, doing their work without discrimination to whoever is involved in an act that is not within the confines of our laws. If you have a government that want to do that and we insist on doing that, even with the present arrangement that we have, we'll still have the police or our security agencies acting in the interest of all of us.
Good, John. So it comes to a certain president's character and his behavior and his belief in the systems. And I wish I wouldn't have to use my person, but I've always told people that I was lucky in the sense that what I know has happened to other IGPs in the form of persistent interference that occurred. They didn't happen in my time. And that the only time somebody came and said, the president said I should do something, I went to him and he said, I don't interfere in the work of my chief executives. If I want to tell you something to consider, I'll call you myself. So go forth and do what you think is right. But what I means I don't want a situation where what the police do depends on the president, and that you have one president who will do what you are saying, another president who will not do what you are saying. So don't you think that we need laws to back the police? Like if you meet any British police constable, he says, I'm accountable to the law. And he decides to take an assistant commissioner to court for a minor traffic violation, and the assistant commissioner is forced to resign even before the court process is finished. That's what I'm referring to.
You have an experience in that, and I think that if we want to tweak the law to make the police more assertive and independent, each citizen will be happy to see it happening. But we must be mindful. You see, in not just the police, the public service, civil service, need to be bold. The use of names by so-called from above sometimes is abused, and most often it may not be true. I, even as General Secretary, have situations where people even are using Facebook accounts with my name and my pictures on it, duping people around. And you'll be surprised that people with their background will have checked. People who even know me who simply will have put in a call to know whether I'm the one chatting. But normally we are gullible in some of these things. We just accept it because sometimes the person is also in need, so they get swindled by. So the use of authority name is sometimes also the reason. But I think that boldness and the political will to support officers doing the right thing, irrespective of individuals involved, will also serve as a signal to all and sundry to also act in the right manner.
Thank you. Then secondly, the electoral process. All this business of the police protecting or not protecting, the army protecting or not protecting. Do you think that if we improve our electoral process to the position where maybe you go with your identity card, whatever genuine identity card that other countries have, and it is checked by the presiding officer, checked on an electronic system, not by face of something. And therefore, if the machine says you are not Shaibu or Kwakumensa, as you said, whether the police or the party agents, they cannot force you to vote because the machine will not approve that you vote, isn't it? If we are able to improve our electoral system gradually, then it will come to a point where most of the activities of the security services in elections, maybe about 60–70% that we have now, will not be relevant. We'll make them irrelevant.
I think so. Only that we must also sometimes not beat ourselves too much. We've evolved dramatically from the time we started, particularly our Fourth Republic, where we're voting with opaque ballot boxes. We didn't have even voter register in thumbprint, and all that. We've come to a point where we are even biometrically vetting and verifying and vouching for voters. The political awareness, I think, if it is raised, will get to a point that you will not see any reason why you should be exported, so to speak, from some unknown destination to a place that we are just holding by elections, of which its impact will not even affect the composition of parliament. It is something that I think that we need to look at as political actors. These by-elections that don't have effects of changing the composition of parliament, maybe we can look at it. But for instance, this by-election, if the NPP had lost, we'll still come back to 168, we still have the simple majority in parliament, and it doesn't make any difference. The only difference is the political propaganda that will be used around. We've won 169, it's still a majority. But if it is to be a critical election, where winning or losing the election will give you an overwhelming majority that will have an impact of your ability on your own to either change laws or be able to effect some changes. That one, we can say that it is important to have by-elections to be able to determine that critical times. But in most, from 1992, that we had first by-election in Jirapa, for instance, almost all the elections are not critical elections. So maybe in addition to looking at the security architecture, we can also look at the political architecture and see whether something can be done about it.
My last question is not a question. The crest on your left breast, is it a crest for the Hawks or the invisible forces? Which of the forces? Or this morning we've heard of green mambas. Did you know of them? Have you heard of them?
I heard of them, I think, 2 months ago when it was launched by, I think, the organizer of the NDC in the Eastern region.
Oh,
but this crest is General Secretary's crest.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Boadu, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you very much, my lord.
You may leave now.
Okay.
We'll take the victim.